Well, good evening, and welcome to the 2012 Fad. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, we talked about psychic super soldiers in empty cities and how our masters have set, apparently, traps, not just to capture, but to kill their own god. They worship Satan. Why? They think it gives them power. Obviously it does. They're doing pretty good. But beyond just simply capturing and killing your own god, he has an army. You have to capture Satan's demon army at the same time. And how the CIA created psychic super soldiers to hunt down and to kill their own god, because of course they're cowards, they're not going to do it, so they created super soldiers to hunt down and kill their own god, Satan. And so they could then raise themselves up and take his place, becoming gods themselves. I've often mentioned that the thinking processes between us and our masters are so completely different that we will never, ever, ever have a meeting of the minds with these, I don't want to say people, let's just call them individuals and leave it at that. The thought processes of our masters is so alien to anything you or I could possibly comprehend. They actually believe that Satan exists. They actually believe that he is a physical, or she is a physical person, a god. And they actually believe that by sacrificing all life on earth, that they can call their god back to sit on the throne of earth. At which point their great work is to rise up, throw Satan down, and take his place and become gods themselves. Again, as we've talked on numerous occasions, for us to go out and have peace rallies and march and bang on drums and give away flowers and sing kumbaya, hoping to convince them to be peaceful and to treat our world with respect and, treat us like, people, is just lunacy on our part. They worship Satan. At that point, all reasonable discussions are just not possible. Anyway, tonight I thought we would chat about how to deprogram someone, whether it's a real human being or just a clone of a human being. Clones are people too. The CIA does this on a daily basis. The CIA is completely based on black magic. They are the descendants of the Jesuit order, the assassins of the enforcement arm, I guess, of the Catholic Church. And of course, the Catholic Church today is simply the descendant of the original Roman Empire. Originally it was the Holy Roman Empire, and today it's the Holy Roman Catholic Church. And they still have the same base of operations. They're still based in Rome. Anyway, the CIA is the inheritor from the Jesuits. The Jesuits are the inheritors from the ancient Babylonian slave mentality. So, nothing's new. They just keep redoing the same old stuff. And the CIA loves to program children to become sex slaves, soldier slaves. It's just part of who they are. Why anybody would want to do this, I don't know. To deprogram someone, and I was deprogrammed quite by accident as far as I can tell, it's actually very simple when you get down to it, but it's also painfully, brutally hard. You have to remember the CIA starts raping children pretty much at the moment they're born, torturing them, abusing them, fracturing their souls, as it were, compartmentalizing their psyches. It's hard to get over that. Because someone who's been programmed to be a super soldier or a sex slave, they've been put through the most brutal, most sadistic, and the most unimaginable horrors possible, and all, as I say, as very small children. And then, again, this is done just to fragment their minds and to use their own minds, their own souls against them. As I mentioned, the CIA is just the descendant of the Jesuit order, who themselves are the descendants of the Babylonian slave traders, our masters, routinely rape little children, infants, as the first steps towards destroying who they are as people, both boys and girls. And sometimes these ritual black magic abuses begin inside of the mother's womb. I actually, here's today's plug, I actually wrote about this in my 5 books, Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, which you can get on our website, coffeeandblood.com or amazon.com. And at one point I described how part of a black magic ritual was used when they genetically cultured a clone, for example. They would insert the cloned cells, the egg, into the woman's womb, but first they had to butcher the fetus that was already in the womb as part of the black magic ritual. And the newly genetically modified egg was inserted into the womb, into the corpse of the fetus that was still there. And this was a black magic ritual. And I wrote about this, sadly, and we'll be writing more about that in the next series of books. Again, Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead. You can buy that on our website, coffeeandblood.com. And of course, all proceeds go to building the village. As I say, all of these practices are based in black magic and based on the worship of their god, Satan. And again, how are you going to deal with somebody on any kind of level that you and I would understand about, let's clean up the planet, let's be nice to people, let's stop hurting people, let's stop wars, when they practice black magic and worship Satan. Whether Satan exists or not, doesn't matter. Our masters believe it. And that's all you and I, that's the only thing we have to worry about. As I was one of these tortured and abused children, I know firsthand what I'm talking about, and at the age of 52, I still do not know or remember everything that was done to me. But I live with the results every day. And every day, I become more myself, a little by little. When you're a sex slave or a soldier slave, you're programmed to self-destruct at the age of 30. For me, my trigger didn't go off until the age of 31. It started for me, the healing process, at the age of 31, when I was living, or rather existing, in Studio City, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, which is in Southern California in the United States. And I was working as a full-time temp. At that particular time, I was working at the Disney Studios. At that particular time, I could work, but that was all I could do. I was terrified of people. I was terrified of everyone and everything. Everything was a nightmare for me. Just a simple trip to the grocery store, that was only about 15 minutes by car. For me, it was a voyage through hell. And in my mind, and the way my programming was, a 15-minute trip for me was like driving for hours. And it was like a trip through damnation. The entire world was, for me, completely distorted, out of focus, mostly black and white, some shades of gray. It was a living nightmare. It was like living inside of a horror movie. And then one morning, it was February 2nd, I remember that very clearly, it was the anniversary death of my last real relative, another CIA mind control subject. I woke up, literally, to what had been done to me as a small child. At least enough awareness that made me so ill, so sick, that I actually had to crawl from my bed in a little studio apartment, down the hallway, into the bathroom, on my hands and knees, stick my head in the toilet and dry heave. And I dry heaved into that toilet for about 18 months. As I said, I could work. And it appeared for all the world that I could function, But that was after crawling into the bathroom every morning, dry heaving into the toilet. I would then take a shower, get dressed, go to work. I could work. I was on the A-list of 3 different temp agencies in Hollywood at the time, and I was in tremendous demand. I was turning work down. I would then go home from work, have dinner, watch TV, hoping against hope my mind would shut down. And then I'd crawl into bed and have the most graphic, horrifying, terrifying dreams imaginable. Things I can't even now describe. Those that I can remember. And then I'd wake up in the morning, bathed in sweat, and begin my daily ritual, crawling on my hands and knees into the toilet. After 18 months of this, I knew I could not handle this alone. This was too much for me. This was too big for me. But I didn't make that much money. I was working all the time, but I was being taxed to death. And I just really didn't have anything. I was trying to start little businesses on the side, and not realizing the disaster it would be. I tried using credit cards to keep my little businesses running, and of course that was a mistake. That took me 20 years to pay off, but I did manage to pay it off finally. So I went, not knowing any better, I went for looking for traditional help. I looked for a psychiatrist. I managed to find one and could only afford one session. It was like $75 for half an hour, and at that point, no, I couldn't do that. She did nothing for me, but at the end of it told me, the end of the session, she told me we needed lots more work, at which point I pointed out I could not afford her, and I just left. The first real steps towards being me, I was going to say being normal, but from what I've seen of the human world, normal just frankly doesn't exist. The first real steps towards being me was when I was working at the local mailbox, etc. in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard, again, suburb of Los Angeles, Southern California, the United States. And I was meeting all these big Hollywood stars, as they all had P.O. boxes there, and producers and directors, and as well as there's always the local characters. Local characters are a tradition in Hollywood. They're everywhere. They're just people just desperate for attention. And that's why you go to Hollywood to be a star. You're desperate for attention. Now one such local color called himself the Captain. Now the Captain was a very powerfully built little black guy. Came about basically the top of his head came to my shoulder blade. And he fancied himself the descendant of pharaohs. And he wore this skin-tight latex outfit of like white and neon blue. And he even wore a pharaoh's crown. I can't remember what a pharaoh's crown is called. To say that he stood out in a crowd was an understatement. But he was truly a nice man. I didn't have the heart to tell him that Pharaoh was actually a white man with red hair and blue eyes, as that's a genetic trait of all the people that the Babylonians genetically modified to serve them. But other than that, he was a nice man. He was a father, and he was a professional trainer. He was very popular with the female movie stars and television stars in Hollywood who trained him as their personal trainer. He had girlfriends that you and I couldn't even possibly begin to imagine, and they were all desperate for him to marry them. He didn't fall for that. Good for him. Anyway, he and I got to be pals, and I mentioned to him that I really wanted to do weightlifting. And at the time, I was 6 foot tall and weighed 138 pounds, so that was, sort of funny. I'm a little shorter now and not that light, but I'm still sort of sticks and bones at the moment. Anyway, he declared, staring at this little skinny little guy, that he was going to make me a power lifter. I said, okay, cool. Well, I never had the money to continue working with him. I was being taxed to death, as we talked about. But the very first thing the Captain did for me was to give me a massage with magnets. There was something about the magnets, and we've talked about the need that the human body has for a very strong magnetic field in order for us to be healthy. We covered this in a previous episode. But for some reason, the massage with magnets triggered something in my body, my mind. I actually began to heal. The first effect that I remember experiencing was to suddenly notice that the people I work for at the mailbox, etc., there in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard, were treating me very, very badly. It then occurred to me that everyone I had ever known growing up or had ever worked for had also treated me very, very badly. And for some reason, I had never noticed it before. As the years went by, and I forgot repeatedly about my first day of waking, I guess, I continued to heal. Part of the child rape trauma programming that the CIA does is to continually remind you to forget. And sometimes I forget for years that any of this happened. Of course, I also continue to forget the anniversary of my last living relative's death. He was also a survivor, if you could call what we are survivors, of those same child-raping, trauma-based torture sessions from his or our CIA handlers. But for him, luckily, on 1 February the 2nd, it all ended. This was years before, my triggers kicked in and I began somehow to heal. he came over to see me, and he was breathing so hard he could barely talk. And then he just collapsed in my arms. And there I am, sitting on the floor holding my cousin in my arms, and I'm screaming to the neighbors to call an ambulance. I could feel, I had my hand on his chest, I could feel his heart beating faster and faster. And he was breathing faster and faster, and he couldn't get any air in him. And somehow I managed to get the idiot neighbors to agree to drive us to the hospital because, there was no ambulance. No help was going to show up. It's Hollywood. And I was also screaming for someone to give me a gun. My cousin was in such horrifying pain, I just wanted to put him out of his misery. No one would give me a gun. If they had, I'd be in prison now because I would have shot him just to put him out of his misery. I mean, you can't begin to know or understand what horror is until you see it actually not unleashed, but no longer controllable. And it just pours out of the body. And so I held on to him while they went to get their car. They'd finally decided they were ready because I guess our screaming was enough to motivate their moronic brains into some sort of action. And so I held him. And all he did was scream and scream and scream. And he never made a sound. So as the idiot neighbors came back to tell me they were finally ready to drive us to the hospital, I just told them to never mind. My cousin died in my arms as I held him. I had my hand on his chest over his heart as he continued to scream without making a sound. And I felt his heart stop beating. And I just sat there on the floor sobbing, unable to move, and I just held him. I was probably the closest human contact he had ever had in his life. My only thought as I tell you this is that I hope that, he's safe now. That he is back in the real world, reborn as a tiny child, a baby, an infant, newborn. And I hope he was reborn to people who would truly love him and will be kind to him. And that he could just forget he was ever here in this terrible, terrible place you call home. These are the things I would like to forget about. But they're a part of me. And we are, frankly, just a collection of our experiences. And our masters know this, and this is why they lay these layer after layer of horrors, tragedies, wars, disease, hatred on us. Because we know it becomes part of us. So I guess the only hope I can have is that someday I'll finally have happy memories to lay on top of the only memories I've ever had to date. Bad ones. Anyway, next. Somehow I managed to find a qualified and talented and skilled hypnotist. And she was the next major step in my healing process. Psychiatrists are a waste of time. Mostly they're really sick people themselves. Just stay away from them. Again, not having much in the way of money, and what I was making I was being taxed to death on, I could only afford 2 sessions with her, this hypnotherapist. And they were way too far apart in time for me and for her. But she managed to unlock what I guess I could call triggers, for lack of a better word, or maybe memory blocks is what they were. Again, that pre-programmed thing to forget. But from those 2 one-hour sessions, each time with me crying so hard that she actually thought I would have a heart attack, my shirt soaking wet as I sobbed and screamed, I got rid of, or I guess I got accessed more of what had been done to me. Horrifying imagery, horrifying events, most of which I cannot even consciously remember. And the interesting thing to me is, even today, knowing that these things were done to me, the programming is still there to make it look like a cartoon fantasy, like a Disney movie. And Disney movies, traditionally, especially the animated ones, are very crucial to CIA mind control projects. Again, we had an episode about that. If you think Disney is all cute and cuddly, get a DVD of your favorite Disney movie Put it into your DVD player, turn off the sound, and play it in slow motion. And have some friends sitting with you. And just keep a piece of paper and a pencil handy and note what you see. It's really quite astonishing. The bigger the TV, the better. So after, the next step for you, after you've done the basic things, the magnetic therapy would be good, start trying to find a professional hypnotist. The lady who helped me, her last name, strangely enough, was Warlock. I always thought that was very appropriate. I pretty much scared her to death from what she learned listening to me. She moved, never saw her again, couldn't find her again. So the next step of deprogramming someone you care about, or yourself, and hopefully you care about yourself too, it's more like a checklist, do's and don'ts. The first is these things you must stop doing if you hope to get well, or at least to get to a place where the demons, and they are demons, frankly, that have been implanted into your body, into your mind by CIA handlers practicing black magic, can finally be removed, or in my case, driven out. That was fun. Stop smoking. Stop drinking alcohol. Stop all illegal drug use. Stop, but gradually, all legal drug use. Stop eating poison, which means don't shop at your local grocery store. Stop watching TV. We will do an entire episode on the Lily Wave, the Lily Effect, and all that. And stop reading the newspaper. That was pretty simple. Next, simple. I've never smoked, but I can imagine how hard that would be. I don't drink, so I don't know. Never did illegal drugs, or legal drugs for that matter, beyond tetracycline and aspirin. I can barely tolerate aspirin nowadays. Here's the things you should do. Eat only organic foods. Drink lots and lots of fresh water. And get 8 hours of sleep every night. Wow, that was tough, wasn't it? Again, it's no big deal. But each of these activities have a direct effect on you, your body, and the things, and whether you call them demons or programs or tapes, I've called them all three. Whatever it is these CIA handlers put inside of you. They're trapped inside of your body with you. They're in there, and you got to get them out. Something that I also found, again by accident, that was very useful was colloidal silver. I bought a silver maker from SOTA Instruments in Canada, SOTA, S-O-T-A, and the word instruments, one word, sotainstruments.com. And it's a wonderful thing. I still have it. I'm here in Europe. I still have it. Now, our grandparents, generations ago, knew that if you put a silver dollar into a bucket of fresh milk, that the milk lasted days longer. In the early 1900s, scientists discovered that silver was 100% effective against bacteria, infections, funguses, diseases, pretty much everything. It was 100% effective. In modern Western medicine today, the best they can achieve, when it's any good at all, is 98%. There's that number again. Which means that if you kill 98% of the bug, the 2% that remains, that would be you and me, they become stronger. And then they multiply. And becoming stronger, nothing can kill them. Which is why we have all these superbugs today. But silver is 100% effective against the same bugs. So, add silver, colloidal silver, to your diet. And trust me, a little colloidal silver goes a very long way. So buy your silver maker, follow the directions, and then take one eyedropper, only one eyedropper of your silver, colloidal silver solution, and add that to a 5-gallon bottle of water. That's it. No more. Then you drink that every day. Next, get yourself, and you'll have to go online for this, you'll have to get some food-grade hydrogen peroxide. Now, this is not the stuff you buy in the store for 99 cents and you color your hair with, or bleach your hair with. That's poison. You want food-grade hydrogen peroxide. And so what's that? It's basically liquid oxygen. And as we talked about in a previous episode, we need to get as much oxygen into your body as is possible. And with this stuff, you have to be very, very careful. In the form that it comes in from the store, it will burn you. It will burn you. You have to be intensely careful with this stuff. You've got to dilute it twice. follow the instructions to dilute it. You do it the first time, you get a bottle of the stuff. Dilute it again the second time, and then 1 eyedropper of the second dilution goes into that same 5-gallon bottle of fresh water. And there you have my basic How to Deprogram Yourself, Part 1. First, we have to get you as healthy as possible. We have to get your body fit. We have to get you in a place where it's possible to get rid of the demons, the programs, the tapes. We have to get them out of you because they're in there with you. If you have any doubt about this, this is something, again, you can try for yourself. Go stand in front of a mirror and look into your own eyes. If there's something in there, it won't like it. And it will force you to avert your eyes from the mirrors. The program, the demon, the tape, it won't let you look. It will not allow you to see yourself as you truly are. And you really need to see yourself as you truly are. None of this will be fun. But at least this way you will survive, and you will grow, and you will have the strength to fight back, and you will finally know who you really are. You'll be able to make your own decisions, and at a certain point, again, we talked about this in an earlier episode, at a certain point you'll actually be able to hear yourself, probably for the first time. And if you can hear your own thoughts and feel your own feelings, then you can feel your own body and what's going on with it. And at that point, you can then begin to listen to the world around you. You can listen to the people around you. You can hear the planet and the animal life around you. And at some certain point, you'll be able to hear the universe breathe. So never stop fighting back. At least, not until it's time to run for the hills. Me, I'm ready to run at a moment's notice, and with as many pretty girls as I can find. And I hope to see you there on the flip side. For all of us here at the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk, wishing you a really good day and reminding you to keep at least one good thought.